Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Today, my opponent tried to hit me with a pretty dubious opening, the Napoleon Attack. Let's see why it's bad. So a quick look at the review. So in this game, I did very well out of the opening and sort of had a commanding lead afterwards, and very pleased with that accuracy, 92.5. My opponent played okay as well, 78%. But I definitely, was never in trouble as per the chess.com bot. Let's have a look now at the analysis. So the Napoleon attack starts after e4, e5, and then queen to f3. Now, queen f3 is not a good move, and you can see Stockfish already gives it a minus 0.5 to black. Basically, early queen moves are often very risky, and if you are going to play an early queen move, playing the wayward queen, so queen all the way to h5 is probably better, because firstly, that pawn is pinned, you're threatening another pawn there, and you also are not blocking the natural development square of your king's knight. Now, I've only played one previous game of the Napoleon attack, and in that game, it really goes to show why early queen moves are bad. It basically went something like this. So knight c6, opponent now plays bishop to c4, basically lining up for the scholar's mate. Of course, that's pretty obvious. So queen now to f6, they look at each other. My opponent lost their nerve, brought their queen back. So now queen's had two moves, knight forward, threatening the queen, but also, there's a fork there on the pawn on c2. So queen move yet again back to their starting square. Now I develop a bishop to c5. Potentially I could get a scholar's mate of my own if the opponent's not careful. They now develop a knight. Knight captures knight. They capture back with pawn. Queen now to h4. Scholar's mate set up. The opponent didn't see it. Forward. Checkmate on move 8. So that's the sort of badness that can occur with playing the Napoleon attack and bringing your queen out early. Now, in this game, I chose not to do something like that. I knew that playing a knight move, either knights, would probably be better. I decided to play very provocatively and bring my own queen out. So queen to f6. Stockfish disapproves, plus 0.3, wants the knight to go out. But I was thinking that if my opponent's going to play aggressively with a queen, they want to do something with their queen. They're probably thinking of a scholar's mate rather than any particular theory. And this nukes that whole plan right away. Scholar's mate will not work now, even if they bring the bishop out. And basically, I'm inviting a queen trade. And they oblige, and I capture back with the knight. So now we have a queenless game at the end of on move 3. So absolutely incredible. On move 3, we've already had a queen trade. And what's actually happened? What's actually happened is like black and white have now reversed move orders. I am now one step ahead. So it's like we've both developed our king's pawn, and I now got to develop my knight first, and we don't have our queens. So they developed knight c3, I developed the other knight, they developed their knight, basically a funny 4 knights without queens. I now play bishop c5, they deliver symmetrically, bishop c4. I do short castles. They decide to play d3. I play a d6 symmetrically. And now opponent plays knight g5, which I think doesn't make a lot of sense, because the logic here is potentially to attack the pawn on f7. And to be perfectly frank, I am happy to trade those two pieces, which are very active, with these two pieces, particularly the rook, given they're not particularly active. At this point, I decide to play knight d4, and basically here I'm setting myself up for a fork of the rook and king. opponent tries to defend that pawn with a bishop move, and so here I do another provocation. What is that knight actually doing there? And that forced them to commit. They took, and you can see that's a blunder, -4. And as I said before, 2 minor pieces are not worth a rook, particularly in the early game, because rooks basically don't really contribute. And still, they haven't addressed this issue of the impending absolute fork. Now they push forward again. So this is obviously a very aggressive player. So potentially maybe thinking of doing something like this as well. However, I'm ahead basically. So capture. They capture back. They still haven't addressed this thing. And so now I've got the rook as well. And more than that, I can possibly force the king away so I can actually evacuate that knight. There we go. I bring my knight back out. That also comes with check. King forced to move again. I give another check. And here, again, more provocation. I want to potentially trade pieces because I'm up on pieces now. Now, it would be a mistake to capture, because if they capture, rook captures, and then if I move the knight out of the way, rook now captures that pawn as well. So this is really just binding them up. Rook can't get anywhere, bishop can't get anywhere. Invitation for the bishop to capture. If they capture, I would be very, very happy. And here the opponent, I don't know what they were doing. Like, they were making moves really, really fast, 83 minutes, and they'd spent basically 10 minutes thinking the next move. And I was actually getting a little bit annoyed, actually. I sent a message saying, hello, are you still there? But then they made the move after 10 minutes. I don't know what was happening. Maybe they, I don't know, had a phone call or had to go to the toilet or something. So here I just decide to just to block that advance of that pawn, and they crack. Capture, very happy. Rook now tries to attack, but, doesn't work. And now I push my pawn to c5, so basically nuking so any potential attack from that rook, and also trying to block out the mobility of that rook. They make another king move. That's cool. Yep. So now I've got the opportunity. That potentially is a fork there. And I'm also potentially attacking that pawn. So they choose to send that pawn, which makes sense, but I get to capture with check. And, now attacking, I expected them to move forward, but now I can, chasing their rook around. And this is one of the things with knights against rooks, especially when the rook is a bit hemmed in. The rook often gets a little bit stuck. And basically the rook is now stuck in this little corner, and I choose to defend that knight. Basically, the rook has now nowhere to go. It's not contributing to the game. They push a pawn. That's cool. Again, box in their pawn. They move the rook. I think trying to evacuate it out. I suppose that makes a lot of sense. I now bring my rook out. Push forward. Yeah, that's cool. Yep. And here, king opposition. Yep, they're trying to move their rook again. And here, what I'm doing is, what are they going to do? If they move the rook out of the alignment, I take. It's also a discovered attack on the rook. Expected them to potentially see it, and they did. So they had to stay on that file, or they chose to stay on that file to protect that pawn. Now I get to move my rook onto the b file. 2 attackers now. Opponent now tries to moves. Yeah, I suppose that doesn't really make a lot of sense because they're basically giving up that pawn. I take. Another rook move, and here, mate in one, and I didn't see this mate in one. I'm not so good with seeing knight checkmates in the middle of the board. Can you see? So the checkmate is here. So knight here with check. The king can't go here. That's blocked off by the king. Can't go here. Blocked off by the bishop. And this, of course, this whole rank is blocked off by the rook, basically like that's the edge of the board. So I, I didn't see that, and I thought, yep, I'll do some sort of discovered attack on the king. They move it out of the way here, and my goal here was just to push this pawn to promotion. You know, that was potentially a move, but you know, that I get protect and also attack, so I was pretty happy with that move. They move again, push forward again, and you know they've really got nothing, no choice. No, that rook was completely hemmed in. So queen here, and here, look, you can sort of, it's possibly a scumbag looking move because I decided to force that that exchange. While you know I could have just straight up just taken it. Anyway, I did that. They captured, I captured, make one more move, and right after the move, they opted to resign. And you know they basically, you know, I've got 2 minor pieces and queen. They basically had no hope at this point. Good game, GG. 2 takeaways from this game. At the beginner intermediate level, don't play early queen moves unless you know what you were doing. And 2, trading 2 minor pieces for a rook and pawn is usually bad. I hope you found this game interesting, and thanks for watching.